Hello, folks, and welcome back. It's Chris live in central Pennsylvania. Listen, the tech gremlins are at it today. They're all over the place. My guest today is Rob Hersov. Been a while since we chatted, and I apologize, but there's some feedback, and we'll do the best we can to get through this. But Rob and I have had some tech gremlins. He's had some on his side. I've had some on my side. We're just trying to work way through it. So apologies for that, folks. But it's it's weird stuff. I woke up this morning, and once again, the security software had locked me out of my database on Firefox, and I had to sign into 357,000 websites individually by checking my phone, using the Authenticator app, putting a password in, giving my firstborn, and marching to the hill. Anyway, just seriously, Rob, welcome back. Good to see you again. You're on mute. There you go.
Thank you, Chris. And I think the gremlin's probably on my side because I've been a PC man all my life, and I switched to Apple Mac in the last few days at the request of some friends and business partners of mine and my wife. And I haven't quite wrestled it to the ground. It's not as intuitive as all of you Apple Mac people say. Oh, it's so easy to use. Just plug it in and use it. No, not. But anyway, we're going to get there.
Well, Rob, initially I thought when you said that that you switched over, it was the fault of you. I thought it was Ronaldo's fault, but then you said it was friends of yours, so it clearly couldn't be Ronaldo's fault that you switched.
It was more my wife.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. I'm not going to get involved in that. Your wife is lovely, but I don't want to get involved in that. All right, so I can see what Rob is doing. He's being clever. He's putting his mic off mute, which stops the reverb when I'm speaking. So we'll act as if we're on radio here. Rob, it's been a while since we chatted. Who can save South Africa? Man, municipal elections coming up on November 4th. And unfortunately for me, Rob, I won't be able to be there on election day like I was for the national elections last time because I'm a judge here, and our election's the first Tuesday. And Cyril cleverly realized that I'm a judge of elections, so he scheduled your elections for the next day, so I couldn't possibly fly to South Africa.
That's exactly what he did, November the 4th. What's going to happen in the municipals? Well, there are a number of by-elections that have been taking place over the last few months, and the way to generalize what is happening is Patriotic Alliance is surging in popularity. The DA is holding its own. The ANC is getting smashed. And MK looks like it's coming good in KZN. But what I predict for November is that MK, Mkhonto weSizwe, Jacob Zuma's bunch of mobsters, will take control of KZN. The DA and the Patriotic Alliance will sweep the ANC forever out of the Western Cape. And I do believe Helen Zille will get 40% plus, somewhere between 40 and 50% of Gauteng. And that's the biggest political chess move of the year, maybe of the decade. Is Johannesburg fixable? I ran into a friend of mine, Kgosi Matthews, who's an ex-ANC loyalist. He was made CEO of PRASA, the rail carriage state-owned enterprise, and he could not believe the corruption. He tried to deal with it, and he got forced out. So he's gone very anti-ANC, the family that he came from, and his sister is Naledi Pandor, ex-Minister of Education, ex-Minister of Foreign Affairs, big buddies with Iran. And for Kgosi Matthews to say, I'm out of the ANC forever, and Gauteng is unfixable, which is what he told me. He is so corrupt. There's so many cadres. There's so many waterfalls of money flowing out, not into the potholes, but out of Gauteng coffers. He has his doubts whether Helen Zille can ever fix it. I mean, that's the biggest economic unit in South Africa, and I think Africa, unfixable because of the ANC. Isn't that scary?
Well, Rob, I think exactly what you've made the point there is that they've become so corrupt, so pervasive, so widespread. That's kind of redundant, pervasive and widespread, but we'll go with that. It's everywhere. It's so bad that the corruption is so bad that the ANC can't even make money because they're stealing from themselves through the tender process.
And remember, when the GNU was formed, the ANC and the DA came together in the GNU for our national coalition. But in Gauteng, the ANC refused to do a deal with the DA. And why? Because they are stealing so much money from the biggest economic unit. They don't want any transparency or oversight. It is so corrupt in Gauteng that even the ANC didn't want to have anyone looking over their shoulders.
But Rob, to be fair, we pay attention to Gauteng because it's the economic hub of South Africa. It's the most population. It's where it's all happening, so to speak, although Western Cape is quite dynamic as well. But to be fair, it's already been this way in Northwest, in Mpumalanga, in the Eastern Cape forever. It's just now the infection has gotten so bad in Gauteng that you simply can't ignore it, even if you're an ANC dedicated caterer.
100% right. And what goes, it's like when mum sneezes, everyone catches a cold. Gauteng is the economic unit that matters. And, you could just say, who cares about Mpumalanga? The Eastern Cape can go its own way and fall apart at the seams. It isn't really going to affect the rest of South Africa. Gauteng affects everyone in South Africa. And that's the problem. But, my hat goes off to Gogo Helen at her age, rolling up her sleeves, moving up to Johannesburg, moving into her RDP house, getting security for the first time ever, and saying, I'm going to fix this problem. What an extraordinary woman. What a lioness.
Well, I have to agree with you 100% there. When she was the mayor of Cape Town, I was working, of course, in the intelligence community, and I would tell senior officials that this is the most exciting, dynamic politician on the world, what she's doing in Cape Town, because at that time it was truly amazing. And then she led the Democratic Alliance to its zenith, its highest point that it ever reached, 4,004,000 votes in that 2014 election. And as you mentioned, not to pick on a person's age, but at her age, she's a septuagenarian. At her age, to take on what I consider a poison chalice of trying to save Johannesburg, which is it savable? I mean, I think it's savable if she could get 51% of the vote. I think she could save it. And it would still be an uphill challenge. She would still need 24 hours, seven days a week security because she'll become a target of the gangsters. I mean, this is an incredibly brave decision on her part. I've reached out to her office again to get an interview, one that was promised 6 years ago. And so hopefully this time I'll get the interview because it's apropos with the elections coming up. But other than what's happening with Helen Zille, I'm not hearing much about the DA anywhere other than the PA is beating them in ward after ward in by-elections. But it's fascinating to see that Helen was willing to take on this challenge. I mean, it reminds me of when Peter Groenewald took over the corrections ministry. I'm like, wow, he must really be caring about South Africa or he's crazy. And I think that in both cases, these are elder statesmen, so to speak, who have taken on unwantable, unrewarding, unthankable jobs, things that no one else would do that really have to be done. And I got to tip my hat to Peter Groenewald and to Helen Zille, at least for her trying.
Peter Groenewald's got extraordinary popularity because of his decision to step down as head of the Freedom Front Plus and focus on his job as Minister of Correctional Services, prisons. And he's built this kind of cult following, not just in his sector that he's focused in, but in Soweto. He's got a lot of black people going, this is the we like, who gets the job done and does it right and fixes problems, and we like him. He's got real cult following, which I'm fascinated by. Corne Mulder's doing a superb job. I mean, he is a world-class human being and business and politician, and he's doing a superb job building the Freedom Front Plus, and they're going to surge. They're going to surge in the elections. I mean, they were at, 1.5%, 2%. I can see them 4%, 5% easily. But Gayton McKenzie, too, extremely popular. I get criticized daily. Rob, we love what you're saying, but why do you still support Gayton McKenzie? And I just say, wait and see. He is one of us.
Well, in fact, you do get criticized regularly for that, Rob, for supporting Gayton McKenzie. I try to be objective about Gayton. When he says something makes a lot of sense, I'm there. And when he says something makes me scratch my head, I also point that out. But I'm of the same mind here. I just let me give you, I haven't given any predictions, although Biz News, I did kind of, tongue in cheek say, back in 2021, last municipal elections, a week after that, looking at the data, I predicted the ANC would get 38 to 42% in the national election, and it was 40%. I came right on. Now, the truth changed. There was no MK party at the time, but then load shedding have been so bad, then it improved, and MK came along, so it balanced each other out as far as the vote. But in this election, I'm looking at it this way. The ANC is down to 30% or less nationwide. Now, nationwide doesn't matter. It's in local municipalities, but nonetheless, that's a huge marker. The DA, I think, is probably going to lose some. You say they're going to hold their own. Maybe they'll hold their own, but I think they're going to lose some share of the vote. I don't know if it'll be major, but a lot of people are very angry at the DA because of all its lines in the sand over NHI and Bella and EWC, and they've been very quiet, and also the debacle with South Africa's white Minister of Agriculture. That has also been an issue for a lot of DA voters. But I agree with you. The PA is going to surge. I could see the PA jumping up to 5 or 6% and potentially, and same with the Freedom Front Plus, which is going to have a major impact in metros. Those two, especially the PA in the Western Cape, could very likely be kingmakers or even the lead vote getter in some of these municipalities. And that's going to be a shock to the system for the ANC, I think. As far as MK, that's a tough one. You know, they win a ward in the Western Cape. I'm still scratching my head on that. But I think they'll do well in KZN. But it looks like the IFP is also picking up some of the vote that it lost over the years. So what is for sure is that the EFF is becoming a rounding error and very unpopular. Would you agree on that sentiment?
I'd agree on all those comments. I think you're absolutely right. But I think what people are missing with the DA is coming under a lot of criticism from its center-right home base. So the DA is many churches, or whatever the expression is. You know, you've got a Cilliers Brink, who I define as a Republican, and Jordan Hill-Lewis as a Democrat. You know, Jordan Hill-Lewis does, and I like him very much, and I respect him very much, but, you know, he's quite young. And so he sort of does espouse a lot of the green, LGBT, wokey, lefty rubbish that I don't believe in. But he's part of the DA, and so is Cilliers Brink. And Cilliers Brink is not woke at all. He's anti-woke, as is Helen, by the way. She wrote that book, Go Woke, Go Broke. So you have a broad church in the DA. And I think DA is upsetting a lot of the center-right voters, myself being one of them, who are moving to Freedom Front Plus. And I think that's what you're seeing. But what we're missing is, by being kind of slightly lefty within its broader church, it's picking up a lot of people who've given up on the ANC, who hadn't been voting, and who say, well, the DA has been pretty well behaved in the GNU. We like the GNU. It's bringing everyone together. And the DA have not thrown their toys out of the cot every other week, as they could have, and in my view, should have. And therefore, we quite like the DA. We'll give them a shot. And Gogo Helen, we love. Maybe we'll get behind her. So I think the DA may lose guys like me to the Freedom Front Plus, but they're going to inherit new people who might have been the capitalist wing of the ANC. So that's why I say that they're going to hold their own. They're just going to shift slightly lefter.
Well, if in fact you're correct, Rob, that would make sense. Now, to be fair, I haven't been on the ground since last year. This is the longest gap since the end of the COVID scam that I have been back in South Africa. I'm too busy burning through my capital, visiting South Africans all over the USA. I've been almost everywhere now visiting South Africans, and that takes a lot of time and money. And so I haven't been back. Also, the hip was a problem for a while, but that's not a major issue anymore. So I have not been back, and I won't be back for the elections, but I will be back. I'm not announcing when that's going to be for obvious reasons. But I'm not on the ground, so I don't see it. I mean, when I'm on the ground, I get a sense of this because I travel all over the country. So what you're saying is very plausible. I'm just not seeing it. And that's, to be fair, when it comes from my audience is center right or some farther to the right, for the most part. I don't have much. I do have some left of center viewers, but not a lot. So I'm not seeing it because I'm not on the ground. So I'll accept that premise, and I'll pay attention for that because I think that's important. But Rob, the thing that I've always told people, and I tried to convince South Africans in 2021 after I started doing this, I'd been at it for about a year and a half when the election took place. I said, please go vote. Please go vote. My vote doesn't count. I'm white. Well, whether you're white, colored, black, or brown really doesn't matter. Your vote is what matters, but it won't matter. But it will matter. And here's the perfect example of it. Port Elizabeth, if they had just held the same number of votes, the DA from the previous election, they would have had outright control of the council, and we wouldn't have had this debacle we've seen that's just gone on ever since former DA mayor there was ousted years ago in this nonsense coalition with one seat kingmaker garbage. But if the DA just held the same number of votes, not even gave them a percentage, just the same number of votes, they would have had outright control of the municipality. And your vote does count. And the reason I say this, Rob, and you know this because you're obviously you're businessman and entrepreneur, you know that society functions on law and order and it functions on services. If you don't have roads, if you don't have electricity, if you don't have security, you don't have anything. You have to have security. That's job one. And then you have to have roads, you have to have electricity, you have to have water. And this is the problem. And how is that delivered? In South Africa, it's mostly by local municipalities. So you, as a small party, can show that you can govern and convince people, whether they're black, white, or brown, that you're the standard to go to in national elections if you provide services locally. And that's the argument the DA has been making without saying it in the fashion I'm saying it for years. By saying vote for the DA, they get things done. I don't know that I agree with that, but that point is valid. And I think that South Africans, instead of showing up in 31%, the last time they're like it's 38 or 40%. No, that was of registered voters. Of eligible voters, the 43 million, only 31% voted. We need 60% turnout on this, and people need to come out and vote against the ANC, against MK, and against EFF. And then South Africa, I think, has a chance to survive. What do you think, Rob?
Well, Willem Petzer has a view on this, and he says that the wealthier, more educated South Africans are disproportionately more likely to vote than the impoverished huddled masses. Therefore, if hypothetically, if you got every single South African to vote, what would the result be? One could ask. I mean, I don't know the answer, but I don't think it's what we want to hear. It could be the likes of ANC, MK, and EFF sweep to power with a vast majority. Instead of a 60-ish%, which is where they were in 2024, they might be at 80%. And that's what worries me. So everybody goes, everyone's got to get out and vote. But what we're really saying is the DA, FF+, PA, IFP, COPE, ACDP people need to get out and vote. That's really what we're saying. And it just worries me. If everybody had to vote, what would the country vote for? I think we'd be very, very unhappy with the result.
Well, and this is the argument I made, is that in low turnout, the small parties can take over municipalities. That was my point with the whole thing. If you just get out there and vote, you can take over these places. And these South African voters aren't listening. A lot of white voters, a lot of color voters just don't go to the polls. And if they went to the polls in vast numbers, you'd see changes in South Africa.
You know, I went to Knysna and I spoke at Knysna, and there's a Choose KC, Knysna Council organization, real grassroots. And it's come about as a result of unbelievable frustration with how Knysna is falling apart. And it's business people, it's, recently employed, it's students, it's, Gogos, Omars are all coming together saying, this isn't working at all. We've got to fix this. And they're forming an organization which I think will turn into a political party for the municipals on November the 4th, which could well win Knysna. It'll be them against the ANC, but they could win it. And with the municipals, we may see a lot of very, very local, like the Bafubi organization, the Cederberg, or whatever that party was called, fabulous guy running it. You could see a lot of very, very local organizations winning control of their municipalities. And these are sort of people saying, even the DA, FF+, ANC, whomever, cannot fix this town. We need to fix it. We're forming our own municipal party and running our municipality. Now, that never translates into the national election. Those parties need to say, okay, we've got the municipality. We're not going further than that. And I would support something like that. Run your own municipality.
Well, as you mentioned, there are examples of that. In Rustenburg, we've had, of course, the Forum for Democrats, a Tswana-based party that I've interviewed, one that was cheated out of the municipal seat because of either an accounting error or an intentional error of miscounting the number of votes the EFF got in one ward. So they did get the proportional seat, but we had to go to court over that. And then, of course, in Kanaland, you've always got this local party. So you make a very good point there that people may just rise up and form their own parties locally, and or just vote for candidates because you can have independent candidates now. So that's a spanner in the works here that people need to pay attention to. I agree 100%. But yeah, the low turnout, that's what I told people in the 2020 election. I said, just go vote because people aren't showing up. And if enough people show up for your party, it won't take many votes to win. I mean, that's the bottom line. We have primaries. I have an election on Tuesday. I'm the judge of elections, and the turnout will probably be 18 to 20% at best. And so, you wind up getting selected for your party's candidate. Then in November, when the turnout is over 50%, you've only got one candidate to go against, and you can focus on that. So low turnout does benefit small parties if they can turn out the vote, but they've got to turn out their vote. And that's the thing. They got to have a good ground game. And, the DA says it has a blue machine, but I'm not sure about that.
Look, we want the DA voters, the FF plus voters, ACDP voters, Patriot Alliance voters to turn out, but not the other guys. That's my view, telling it straight.
Well, I think that the Freedom Front Plus guys aren't going to turn out, those guys. So, hey, let's shift our attention from the elections. I think that's fascinating. But so now we have a convicted felon who has a jail sentence, who's appealing it, who is demanding that the president, who's involved in a massive scandal and cover-up, resign. Why don't they both resign?
Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't it be nice for Julius to go to jail and to see Cyril Ramaphosa have his day in court? And I think that is heading in that direction.
Well,
I think it's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing for justice in South Africa.
I think it's a wonderful thing for the rule of law. It would be fantastic to see. It's great to see that the Concord withstood the pressure and actually declared the actions of Parliament to be unconstitutional, which at the time it happened, I said, how can they do this? That's not even constitutional. They're not holding the chief executive to account. They're using their majority to just sweep this under the carpet. But here's the thing I've been talking about, Rob, that irritates me is that, I don't care about the parliamentary outcome. I don't care about the ethics decision about Ramaphosa's member of parliament or what they decide. What I care about is a prosecutor preferring charges for criminal activity. We're talking about money laundering, at least $580,000 in U.S. currency wrapped in the bank bans, brought in the country, not declared to customs immigration, not declared to SARS. We've got purported story of the robbers being kidnapped in collusion with Namibian police officers from one country to another. That's rendition. And then tortured and then paid a bribe to keep quiet. And then we have SAPs who lied in their annual report about VIP residences. The one they released publicly said there were no incidents at any of the 43 residences that we guard during that year. These are corrupt officials, corrupt people. And if Cyril's not involved, somebody is. And who the hell stuffs money in a sofa? Apparently, they didn't think that their cleaning crew did a very good job cleaning up the place at Pala Pala. I mean, you stick that kind of money. The money came on Christmas Day, Rob, and it was stolen in February. So the money sat around. Aren't the banks open between Christmas and February at some point? Yeah, well, and this, Rob, so that's my issue. This is criminal activity. Where are the criminal charges? And beyond that, this is the one we know about. How many times has this happened? How many times is it happening we don't know about? How many little private trucks, rental trucks show up at Latuli House with pallet loads of cash from Tehran? I mean, this is a question I think inquiring minds would like to know about, Rob. Any thoughts?
So Julius Malema is a convicted criminal. He's convicted. And Cyril Ramaphosa is a criminal and needs to be convicted. It's that simple. It's as clear as the driven snow.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're not going to argue for me. When the media went silent on this and most content creators didn't talk about Pala Pala, I have railed about Pala Pala every week, if not almost every day for the past 5 years or so. I just keep talking. I never let go of it. I'm like a dog with a bone because this is unacceptable. While we have the media in America freaking out over Donald Trump signing a no-compete contract to get someone to paint the reflecting pool for $2 million and finish in 2 weeks, they forget that Barack Obama spent $34 million and shut the damn pool down for a year. And then if you see the people they interviewed, most of them are black in D.C. because that's a large percentage population. It looks terrible. What did they do? It looks just as bad as they did before they did. But they navel gaze about fake corruption. And here we have genuine corruption and nothing has happened. And don't forget, Rob, you know this too. And for my viewers, MTN. Cyril Ramaphosa was director of MTN. He was on the board. And MTN at the time, when he was there, and Nkabisi Jonas, his special envoy to the United States, who sits in South Africa, both of them were involved in the MTN when it was involved with Iran Cell. And Iran Cell was involved in funding terrorists who blew the legs and the testicles off of U.S. service members and murdered U.S. service members in Iraq and Afghanistan. There are 5 lawsuits currently underway in the United States over this. They're civil lawsuits, not criminal, but 5 terrorism-related lawsuits against MTN and Iran Cell. And his name is in the docket for that. Let's not forget that. That could be huge as well.
So what I love the most is Julius going after Cyril and Cyril going after Julius. And we can just sit back and let them scrap it out to the bottom. I love that. But it's Julius is under huge pressure. The EFF is going nowhere. The ANC is falling apart. They're all infighting. They're trying to steal. It's like a going out of business sale. you've got those signs going out of business in the next 2 days, and everyone's pouring in and looting as much as possible. That's South Africa with the ANC. The ANC know they've got limited time left to steal this country dry, and they're going to try to do that. The water money falls running out. But MK will take control of KZN. Without a doubt. I know you say IFP are surging. They are. They're a respectable, good crowd. I like them a lot. They're one of us. But MK, unfortunately, there's this belief in elders, this mad tribal nonsense. And the fact that people, no matter what a gangster and thug Zuma was, he's got huge support in KZN and good support in Eastern Cape. I think KZN is going to sweep to the MK.
Wow, Rob, that's quite a bold prediction, and let's watch to see if Rob's right about that. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. It's a sound prediction. I hope that's not the case, because MK is simply a vanity project. We just saw another senior MK member resign today. He's been with the party since 2024. It's like a revolving door over there. You're in, you're out, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. It's absolutely crazy. Well, I mean, I could see that happening, but
Chris, here's a thought. So, we're going on about Cape exit, and in our dreams, that is such a beautiful solution. If we could even get there, the Republic of the Cape. But what about KZN seceding and becoming the Kingdom of Zululand? Cut them loose, let the Zulus drive that country into the sea and destroy it. But Zululand, they can have it, in my view.
Well, Rob, you touched on something I've also been talking about for years. Of course, I've interviewed, I know Des Palm and Hein Marks and Phil Craig, all those guys, and then the Cape Exit Party. I know all of them. I've interviewed them many times, been with them, followed them around during the elections. And I have all along, from the very beginning, said that we're more likely to see Zulu secession through the Inganyoma Trust and the Zulu Kingdom before we ever see Western Cape secession. If South Africa is going to devolve, I think it's going to devolve starting in KZN, not in the Western Cape. Now, that would make the Western Cape much more feasible and likely to happen, but especially the DA's made empty promises. Alan Winde has promised a referendum, and he's never fulfilled it. He lied. And so that's not going to happen over there, in my view. So, yeah, I think that the Inganyoma Trust and Zululand in particular would be the first to go. And I think it's not beyond the realm of possibility, because the Zulu are hot full of where the ANC has gone the past 15 years.
I love the way you use your Afrikaans G. You use it correctly. My wife, a New Zealander, can't do the G. And so one of my best friends is Gerrit Steenkamp. I think you've met him. And my wife goes, "How's Harris doing?" It's like an H. She can't do the G. So well done, Chris.
Well, thanks, Rob. Just tell her, pretend she's got phlegm buildup in her mouth, and she'll be okay. She can do the G. I know she's there. She can hear me. She's right there. Say hello to her. Lovely people there. Your wife and the kids, lovely. So, Rob, that's a little bit about that. But the impeachment. What will be fascinating, I think, is two things. Before I get to the impeachment, back to the impeachment, I want to say very quickly that the court has just ruled that it's the end of the Stalingrad thing. The nonsense for Zuma is over. There are no more appeals. The arms case from the 1990s finally must go forward. The charges first preferred in 2003. 23 years later, the octogenarian Jacob Zuma must sit in the docket and be prosecuted for this crime. That'll probably take place through late 2027, assuming he's still breathing. But my prediction is that he will try to do whatever he can to disrupt the court. And it's late innings for him anyway. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but this is long overdue. This prosecution should have happened in 2000, not 2003, not 2026. But Zuma now will have to face the music, so to speak. What do you think?
I hope that happens, but I have my doubts. The way things are being tackled now, or repealed or looked at again, gives me hope that the court ruling on Kill the Boer not being hate speech can be reviewed and overturned as well. Because that is the most brain dead decision ever, most politically enforced decision ever. It needs to be repealed and overturned.
Well, the problem, of course, with that is that the court did find that it was hate speech in 2013 and it was illegal. Then a lower court later, when a case came up, said it was okay, and the Con Court refused to review the case. Now, that's utter nonsense. The Con Court, I think, had an obligation to look at this because it's clearly hate speech. I don't like the term hate speech, but clearly it's an incitement to violence. Incitement to violence is a crime anywhere, and that's a real problem there. So let's shift to something else, Rob, and that's back to the impeachment. What's going to be fascinating is if and when this does come up for an impeachment vote in Parliament, what does the DA do? That's what's going to be interesting, because if they vote to impeach him, they're going to cut their throats to GNU. If they don't vote to impeach him, they're going to cut their throats with their voters. They're in a tough pickle.
So I don't think the DA are going to try and impeach him. But I think they will force him to have his day in court. I do think the DA will support due process, but I don't think they'll support impeachment. You know, there's this argument. There's this continual wit gevaar, swart gevaar. You know, if you don't vote, if you don't keep Cyril in, you're going to get Paul Mashatile or Fakila, and it's way worse. I'm sick of those arguments. I say, Ilia Yaktomes, the die is cast, and let's see where things fall. If Cyril's going to get impeached or put to trial or kicked out, so be it. Let's see who's next. Let's deal with that. I think we've got to keep going and deal with the problems as they come and not fear the what-ifs.
Yeah, 100% with you on that one. I've been saying the same thing. I don't care if the next man up is Paul Mashatile or Fikile Mabulula or Gwede Mantashe. We'll deal with them when they come up and remove them from office if we can. But the bottom line is you don't tolerate gangsterism just because you're afraid of other gangsters. And that's exactly what many South Africans have been saying. Remember the fake, and I wasn't one of them. There's evidence that I wasn't one of them because I wrote about it and I spoke about it. But the Ramaphoria in 2018, when Ramaphosa came in, oh, thank goodness, when he bought off voters at the National Convention and won by 35 votes over Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Boy, where's she at? We have to put her in a milk cart and she's disappeared. But, all that Ramaphoria, and I'm like, I said, South Africa has a chance if they're serious ANC about reform. But I'm not convinced of that. And I wasn't convinced. I never fell for it. But look, I mean, I agree with you, Rob. This nonsense about, we have to keep Cyril because the MK and EFF will come into power. Well, the country's not getting better with Cyril there. It's getting worse. Bella, expropriation without compensation, national health insurance, the Employment Equity Act amendment, 4% of your managers can be white. What the hell is that? That's pure racism. And it's counterproductive. This is one of the reasons, not just the collapsing infrastructure, why South Africa has got so many challenges now.
Not to mention the new amendments to BBBBEEE. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I've heard from 3 different people in the last week a similar message, and this kind of gives me a little bit of hope. Byron Shepherd, body shot, said he's got a couple of friends that he speaks to all the time that are part of MK, and they said to him, Byron, we have a political life and our true beliefs and our real life, and the two, never the twain shall meet. Our political life is we stand up and say, we want the land, we want the land. But the reality is we don't actually want the land. We don't want the farms. We wouldn't know what to do with them. We want mines to beneficiate the mining material in South Africa and not just ship the raw product to Glencore or to Europe where they make the absurd profits. We want things to happen in South Africa. And when we say expropriation, we really want the mines to beneficiate product in South Africa, but we're using, expropriation as the blunt, as the catch-all to get the votes. So what I'm hearing from Byron and quite a lot of other people is that the rhetoric doesn't connect to the reality. So there are a lot of people making their, and Gayton does the same thing. He throws out a big political statement, but the reality is a very practical, capitalist, Christian, centrist, center-right. He's actually populist politician. He is allied to the DA, Freedom Front Plus, IFP, natural ally, and at the right time, you'll see it. But he does his, Robert Sobukwe instead of Craft Renette renaming, which upsets everyone. That's just politicking. The reality is much more moderate, much more conservative, and may save South Africa.
Well, Rob, that's a fair point. And that's one I've also talked about in the context of Donald Trump and others. I said what people say, what they say, and what they do are different things oftentimes. With Trump, Trump says stuff just to throw people off balance. And you shouldn't focus on what he says because he's trolling a lot of people, including his own politicians. You should look at what he actually does. And I think that's the
So,
point.
Chris, on Trump, I want to ask you a question. When will I love this word, kinetic war. Kinetic, from what I understand, means you actually press a button and blow things up. Is that right? Kinetic. When will the kinetic war return in Iran? Tonight, Saturday, or Sunday? I think it's coming very soon.
Well, Air Force One should be touching down about now if it hasn't already. So, no, it won't very, very long. But I want to go back just briefly to what you just said. And I agree with what you said, but I'm going to call out fake news. I mean, I can't for a moment believe that Byron actually has friends. I mean, that's a shocker. I mean, that one's just, I can't buy that. Just kidding. But got to get a little dig in there against Byron. But no, it's the kinetic war. When will the kinetic war start? Well, that's a question. Look, I'm quite tired of this. We're in a war. We're not in a war. The bottom line is we are actually in a war because a blockade is what we're doing. And a blockade is an act of war. There's no question about that. That's decided centuries ago. When you blockade a country, you're committing an act of war. We're just not shooting except in self-defense for the most part. What gets me, Rob, is how the Iranians can claim control of the Strait of Hormuz. And more importantly, how are they actually interdicting? I mean, we sank all their ships of the line. So what are these, patrol boats, Zodiacs going out there? And why haven't we got control of this? Look, I mean, and here's where I'm going to criticize my government. I'm obviously not in the government anymore. I was just actually down at MacDill Air Force Base over the weekend where Central Command and Special Ops Command headquarters are at. That's the folks fighting this conflict, what they're doing from Bahrain, but the main headquarters in Florida. And, I got to scratch my head here because I would have taken a different operational approach to this conflict. As I said, the first action I would have taken is flown Delta and or SEAL teams into Karg Island in the dark of night before the first bombs fell. And I would have taken Karg Island and then moved in a Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is a battalion, and secured the island with troops, or brought a Ranger battalion in there and taken over Karg Island. And then as that's unfolding, bomb the living bejesus out of the Iranian command and control and go after their leaders. That's what I would have done. And I would have already blockaded the Strait of Hormuz. That's what I would have done. Not go into the Arabian Gulf, but stay outside and block all the Iranian ships from coming out and anyone bringing things out. And then once you destroy the Iranian Navy, then just move in and take control of the straits physically and escort ships through there. I don't understand that in the 1980s, when Iran and Iraq were fighting their war, the United States reflagged all those oil tankers with U.S. flag, which is, we don't usually have a flag convenience, but we do it then. And the U.S. Navy provided security and escorted ships through the Strait of Hormuz because Iran and Iraq were both attacking oil tankers. It was disastrous. Why can't we do this now? So this is my criticism. And I think General Kane is about to come under a lot of criticism for his lack of answers about what's actually happening in his campaign. But as far as a kinetic action, I would expect that to start taking place very soon.
I think the American strategy, I don't want to talk military tactics because I was a first lieutenant in the infantry. What do I know? But I look at it from the outside. I'm fascinated by it. And I think America has been genius in its actions and behavior on Iran. Genius. And sitting it out is a genius strategy. Just blockade Strait of Hormuz. Iran started first. America's blockading it now. Everybody else is getting upset. China, the Gulf states, recipients of Iran oil, Iran itself. America's barely affected. So you sit and you watch which pips squeak first. And Trump has been to China. He's landing back now. He's seen Xi. Hasn't told us what the deal is in detail. I think he has delivered the goods second to none. I think what America's done is genius. It's as Max Afterburner keeps saying, 4D chess. I think you guys have all the assets, all the buttons, and this thing's going to get resolved relatively soon. Chapeau America, chapeau Trump. I'm a believer.
Well, I don't disagree that it was the time. It's funny listening to the press, Trump, and you hear these people in the far right, commentators, trying to fracture the base here of support in America for Trump. Several prominent people about, Trump promised no new wars. Yeah, okay, he did promise no new wars, but this isn't adventurism. This is a war that started in 1979. We didn't start this war. 241 dead American service members in Beirut in 1983. They committed that act. They have murdered thousands of Americans all over the world. And if they had their way, Trump would have been assassinated. They actually paid to assassinate Trump, the Iranian regime, during his first term. This is a war they started, and it's long overdue to be prosecuted. Had we prosecuted this war in the 1980s, we wouldn't have this problem today. If we'd done it in the 90s, we wouldn't have this problem today. And what we have, and people just navel gaze, Rob, it's so irritating to me that they talk about, well, this is a war of choice, this war is unnecessary, it's causing global disruptions. Well, I appreciate your comments, but I don't, not your comments, Rob, these people's comments, but I don't buy them. I don't buy them for a second.
And so what?
Yeah, exactly.
And so what?
Exactly. So what?
If you're going to pay more for your fuel for the next 3 months, suck it in, because Trump's doing the right thing. He's de-toothing Iran, and that's the price you pay your expensive gas. Suck it in and pay for that expensive gas. End of story. Because
the alternative is a nuclear-armed Iran within a couple of months that will fire missiles at Israel and incinerate Israel and irradiate the Middle East. And they have missiles that can reach Europe. And some of these people in that regime, even though with third and fourth tier of leadership, are so radical and fanatical that they think that they need to obliterate the world so they can go to their 72 versions. It's their version of Islam is so twisted and bizarre that we cannot allow that to happen.
Chris, think about it from Iran's point of view. They've lost a huge amount of the money, the revenue coming in from oil exports. They have a dearth of leadership. Sorry, the central leadership's fallen apart. So everyone's kind of acting independently. They haven't had internet for 60-something days. Their economy is collapsing. Their real has gone through has fallen through the floor. You know, businesses are collapsing. Anyone who relied on anything to do with e-commerce can't operate. It is bordering on economic collapse. And every day that America sits there blockading increases the likelihood of something dynamic happening in Iran that is positive. And now that Iran has been de-toothed from a Chinese point of view, I mean, what options do they have? The only reason they're hanging on, let me tell you why. Do you remember that photograph of Benito Mussolini and his mistress hanging from a pole? That is the future for the IRGC. They're going to be hung from poles. And that is why they don't care anymore about their country. They just can't afford to surrender or to sue for peace because they will be hung.
100%. That's exactly what I said. Eventually, the people of Iran are going to string these people up. They're just going to hang them from light poles. That's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah, with the Iranians, when this thing started, people said, who's the big loser? And my first comment was China. China would be the big loser. But then I expected oil wouldn't be flowing to China. Well, now that it's strangled off, China suddenly wants to talk. They suddenly want to be friends. Now, to be fair, China tried to present themselves as the other major power in the world. And to be fair, it is a bipolar world. Once again, one can make the argument. It's not a multipolar world, which everyone claimed it was going to be. Really, the only two major players standing are China and the United States. Russia is a rounding error. If it wasn't for them having nuclear weapons, it really wouldn't matter. It's a country full of alcoholics with a declining birth rate and a life expectancy that's
and America is head and shoulders stronger than China. Head and shoulders.
Oh, yeah, you're right about that, Rob.
They're not equal.
In the midst of all this, our economy is still growing. We're outpacing every major industrialized country in the world. The closest to us is Canada, which is surprising. They got a 1.7% GDP growth. Look, I'm not thrilled with 2% GDP growth, but it's adequate. To me, 3.2 to 3.8% for an economy this large is the sweet spot. And we'll get back to that. But now we're seeing inflation, but that's, of course, the price of fuel going up. But what drives me nuts about this is the Irish are losing their minds about fuel prices and protesting. But fuel has gone up 25%. When Joe Biden became president in 9 months, it nearly doubled in price. I mean, I was paying $1.89 a gallon in Pennsylvania before he became president. And within a year and a half, I was paying $4.50 a gallon and then almost $6 a gallon later in his term. And there were no protests in Ireland. Everyone was paying these higher prices. It's amazing to me how people can be moved like sheep. They're like lemmings. They can be directed. It's like watching caribou move in big herds. One moves at the front, they all follow. You know, it's like watching geese in the air, or those Egyptian geese you guys got in South Africa that are so annoying. You know, one goes this way and they all follow. They're just, it's follow the leader, and so few people can think for themselves. The price of oil has gone from $79 a barrel when this conflict started up to 126 peak, back down to 90, back to 115, back to 93, back to 115, and we keep hearing about the price of energy. Well, the price of energy is going to get much higher because those storage tanks are running dry in Europe. They've got a real problem.
So if you've got a real problem, you should get behind Trump 100% and say, finish the job. We're taking pain, whatever it is, like fuel price, Irish farmers. But Trump's doing the right thing. He now needs to finish the job, and we're get behind him and Israel and the Gulf allies. That's what we should be doing. We should be saying, we're behind you all the way, Trump, but get on with it, finish the job, whatever it takes. That's what I do.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that at all, Rob. Okay, so we got a quarter of an hour left here in this conversation, so let's shift gears again. Rob, you famously are one of those people that's not giving up on South Africa. You believe in, and you have the hope that South Africa has a bright future. You just got to get the right mix of right people in the right place. So you're sticking there. You're staying with South Africa, and I applaud you for that. I mean, I love South Africa, and I want it to succeed. I don't like with this sad story. But what's the sense on the ground? I mean, I haven't been there for years, so I don't have my ear to the ground. You move in all kinds of circles. You move with people with a lot of influence. You see everyday people. You see the impact of the economy. Are things really in kind of malaise right now, and they just need a kick? Because the GDP growth has dropped back to 0.5%. Inflation's at 3+%. The numbers don't look good, despite all the economists lying to us last year and claiming there were green shoots. I said that's not the case. Now they're going to blame the Iran conflict, but that's not what's driving this economic malaise. It's all the policies. It's the BEE. It's the collapsing infrastructure. It's the gangsterism. But you have hope for South Africa. Can you give us some thoughts about why we should be hopeful for South Africa? Because I want to be hopeful.
Because South Africa has everything it takes to be an unbelievably successful country and economy. It's all there. All the assets, the infrastructure, broken though it is, can be fixed. It's all there. We just need the right people in charge, turnaround expert, and this thing will take off like a rocket. South Africa has great goodwill overseas. There's a wall of money ready to come in, not even mentioning the amount of money that Donald Trump and his administration would put to play in South Africa if certain things were changed. So South Africa can turn on a dime. But like an alcoholic, until the alcoholic is crawling on the floor begging for help, they're never going to get fixed. And South Africa is getting very close to that point, but isn't quite there yet. So I think more pain is required. It's coming anyway, whether we like it or not, thanks to the ANC. And then this thing will turn. And when it turns, it's going to turn fast. I think Prince Michelle is right. The ANC's gone in 2029, and we're all holding hope that 2029 is when everything swings, which I think it will. But there's going to be some movement in the interim and a huge amount of pain. And that's why I'm a believer. And you say I'm on the ground. Living in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, I might as well be in, Missouri. I am not connected where I am right now to the rest of South Africa. So the only insights I have are conversations with, extraordinary people, or going up country to the Badlands and meeting with people. And, I ran into these four guys last night who I went to Villa 47 to grab a bite quickly before I picked my daughter up from hockey. And these four guys from Joburg. And they said, Rob, come on over, have a drink with us. They live right on the front line of Mordor. We here live in, balmy southern suburbs of Cape Town. The worst we have is mad gale winds on a Monday and Tuesday. So I'm in my little enclave, but the hard work is being done up country. And why I'm confident is I don't want to live anywhere else. You love this country. You know why. You've fallen in love, and this country's fallen in love with you. And you'll never get it out of your skin. You'll never get it out of your bloodstream. And I'm the same. My wife's the same. New Zealander in Cape Town. I love this place. I never want to leave. It's worth fighting for. And you know what I'm talking about. So I have hope. We're going to go through a hell of a lot of pain. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is.
Well, a couple things, Rob, very quickly. Number one, my preferred destination. Oops, I just did this, the alert was on. I'm sorry about that. My preferred destination when I stay in the Western Cape is no longer an option for me. You see, my friends who lived in a gated community next to the Crystal Beach Hotel down there in Gordons Bay are now in America, came over as refugees. So if you have maid's quarters or a broom closet available for my next trip, I'll be knocking on your compound door because I have to find alternative accommodation when I'm in Cape Town. And yeah, I get what you're saying.
No, Chris, firstly, I'd love to help you. I'd love to also help you on flights, as I've done before. So we'll talk later.
Oh, yeah, we will talk later because the prices are going way up. I need to find some. Anyway, but yeah, but seriously, so your point is well taken that you do move in the circles with power brokers and you don't necessarily see what's on the ground. But I mean, when I'm there, I do go on the ground. I'm in Kailicha, I'm in Monenberg, I'm in Alexandria, I'm in Soshoguvwe, I'm in Chatsworth. I go to all these places. And usually the comment I get is, don't you know you're white? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't get the memo. I missed out on that. But I do go to those places, and I don't have my ear on the ground now because I haven't been there for a year. So I was just kind of get a feel for that. So I think what you're saying is valid. South Africa is an amazing place. But here's one aspect too, Rob, and I'm sure that this resonates with you, and we haven't talked about it. And I'm also the person. I said that, if you gave me control of South Africa and I was a benign dictator, I could turn it around right now. I would eliminate BE, that would be gone, and then I would start a real training program for police, which will take a couple years to come to fruition, to actually have real law enforcement, not gangsters running the police, and I would clean house, and we would go from there, because you have to have security. But here's the one underlooked thing, and this comes back to the point you made, and I'm echoing, about loving South Africa, because it's such an amazing place. The millions of talented South Africans at Canary Wharf, in Ottawa, in New Zealand, in Australia, many of them would gladly come back to a South Africa that worked. They would gladly come back to South Africa that's safe, where they can invest and enjoy their years in South Africa. Imagine if South Africa turns that corner and these tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of South Africans, probably hundreds of thousands for sure, would come back to South Africa and pour all that money back in. Look, this is not like, Liberians who refused to go back to Liberia 35 years after we gave them temporary protected status. They live in America. They've gotten comfortable here. The South Africans may be comfortable in Perth. They may be comfortable in Wellington or in Sheffield, or I don't know how you'd be comfortable in Sheffield, but in London. But you get my point. They may be comfortable in those places, but their heart aches for South Africa. Imagine all the expats coming back, and what an incredible amount of wealth. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I bet you Elon Musk would pour billions into South Africa if it wasn't so screwed up with BE.
There are a million South Africans left since 1994. I would say a majority of those are white. If you look at the success of South Africans abroad, it's beyond almost my recognition. America alone. Look, do you follow the All In podcast? It's like probably one of the best podcasts in America on what's going on, business, politics, things like that. The four guys that are on there, they're 3 billionaires, and then the other guy's pretty wealthy too. Of the 3 billionaires, of the four guys, 2 were born in South Africa. The 2 richest guys in LA were born in South Africa. Nate Kirsch just sold his business for $29 billion US. After Elon Musk, Nate Kirsch is the richest South African, and he's based in New York. And as of 4 years ago, he said to me, Rob, I'm not investing in South Africa anymore. I've lost hope. But the minute we turn the corner, Nate and his unbelievable son, Philip Kirsch, I'd love you to meet him. He's a real rock star. They'll come back in spades and reinvest. And you mentioned the reverse diaspora. Of 1 million people overseas, I reckon 100 to 200,000 would return in an instant. They're homesick, or they've made their money and want to come home, or they just hate living in Canada or New Zealand because it's boring as hell. I've been to both, and I agree. I couldn't last 1 week in either of those countries. I'd bite my arm off. They're so woke and boring. At least here you get shouted at, you can shoot back, you can eat bunny chow. And if those people came back with contacts, money, international networks, this country will take off like a rocket and turn on a dime. So that's why I'm hopeful. I'm 66 this year. 2029, I'll be almost 70. I reckon I've got 30 more years in me to see South Africa fly, and I can't wait.
Wow, Rob. I thought you were younger than me. It must be that Richard Branson look you've got about you that makes you look timeless. I do have a question on your profile. Is that Max Headroom that's on your profile? Do you use Max?
Yes.
I thought so.
I've always loved Max Headroom. He's like a blonde surfer dude. It's so funny that. He was the first computer avatar ever produced. I think it was like in the early 80s.
It was in the 80s. Yep, that's correct. Max Headroom.
Well done. You're one of the very few that noticed.
I thought that was the case. Yeah. So, wow. Sorry, I'm still laughing about how boring in Australia and New Zealand are. I hope it's not that boring. I'm going to Australia next year for the World Cup. I don't want to be too bored, but I don't think I will be, because I'll go to Pretoria East, also known as Perth.
No, Australia's okay. But New Zealand, the people are leaving in droves. Even they can't stand it there.
I noticed that. Look, I was there. The only trip I made was, I always thought that I would retire in New Zealand, but this is when I was younger and before Peter Jackson made those darn movies and told everybody about New Zealand. Like, it sounds like a really wonderful place to go. It's amazing. It's got everything: skiing, beaches, mountains, and I thought I'd go there. And then COVID happened, and I saw how Jacinda Ardern and that government behaved. And I'm like, that's the last place I want to live. I'm never going to live in New Zealand. But I was there for the 2011 World Cup, and I found it to be absolutely amazing.
Look, the rugby New Zealanders, I love to the end of the world. The cricketers, the athletes that come into New Zealand, but New Zealand is so woke. I mean, where are the real men? I think they've moved to Australia and wherever. The only hope Australia and New Zealand really have is that they've imported so many South Africans that their rugby and cricket teams are going to have Van Wyks, Van der Westhuyzens, Mullers coming through the ranks, which will give them a chance. Otherwise, they're doomed.
Well, I haven't brought any of the questions in because we've had such a lack of chat so far. We're about to wrap up shortly, but this keeps coming up. People keep asking about you and stand-up comedy. What's going on? Did I miss something? Are you talking about doing stand-up comedy? What's that all about?
So I admire the political commentators that I really admire are people like Konstantin Kisin, who was a stand-up comedian. A lot of these extraordinary philosophers, public speakers have come, their route has come through stand-up comedy. And there are certain stand-up comedians I absolutely love, like Bill Burr, an American, and if you look at public speaking and podcasting, there's you and me interviewing each other. There's you standing up and making a public speak, prepared or unprepared. There's Q&As. There's all sorts of elements of podcasting and interviewing and public speaking. But the highest form is stand-up comedy, because you stand up and if you make them laugh, you win. If you don't, you fail, like a lead balloon. So that's the ultimate to me. I could stand up in front of 1 billion people, unprepared, and speak on pretty much any topic. I'd obviously make things up. I'd love to stand up and speak to 1 billion people at one time. I love public speaking, but stand-up comedy is the ultimate challenge, to make someone laugh.
Well, and the ability to do it instantaneously and do the improvisation. Jimmy Carr is just absolutely amazing. The way he just rips people. There's a couple of younger American comedians, women now, that are very good at that too. They're to the right of center and they just rip the leftists apart. They get hecklers in their crowd and they just utterly destroy them. It's really like the one I can't think of her name. She's an Italian woman. She said something about this thing if there was a black guy and she was holding her purse. And she wanted to make sure she had money in it. And then people assume that's because, the black guy's going to rob her. And she goes something like, well, I didn't know you could I thought it was illegal to buy folks, because slavery and I can't deliver it. But, so I get your point. And the shame is that the woke nonsense really ruined comedy. We lost so many great appearances by comedians over the past few years, but it's coming back now. It's good to see people coming back. If you can't make fun of yourself and others in a playful manner, life is not nearly as exciting as it could be, and it's disappointing. So, yeah. So, Rob, before we wrap up here, we've talked about potential for South Africa and what's going on. Can you tell us a little bit about this guy, Prince Mashele? I don't think all my viewers know about him. You've been interviewing him and talking to him.
Watch this space. Prince Mashele grew up in absolute poverty in Bushbuck Ridge. He didn't have shoes till he was 5 years old. He never had a new toy in his childhood. Never. It was all pass-me-downs and, spare tires. He has read more books than you and I put together. He is self-educated. He is a man of God. He is an extraordinary human being who wants the right thing to happen for South Africa. He predicted the demise of the ANC in 2012. He said by the end of the next decade, the ANC will be irrelevant. He is absolutely on the money. And there is no question in my mind he's about to do something very, very big on the political front. And it's necessary. We need something new. We need something new, not just to appeal to the center right, but to draw the non-voters, the disillusioned, the born frees into the voting platform, but to vote center right, which we know, the Judeo-Christian, libertarian, capitalist, free market, rule of law world is the right world, and we need to reinstitute that in South Africa, and Prince Mashele might be our man. Watch the space.
Well, that's fascinating to hear, Rob. Thanks for sharing that. You know, my prediction in '94 was that the ANC would face their first legitimate challenge in opposition in 2014. And we could argue that the DA was there, but it wasn't enough. They still had plenty of votes, still had over 50%, and they only got below that in the recent elections. So I was a little bit early in that prediction, but I thought that by then that the bloom on the rose would wear off from the liberation credentials, but liberation credentials seem to carry some weight, but they're gone now. Liberation credentials, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear these old ANC fossils talk about, apartheid. They want jobs, they want roads, they want a better life. They don't want to be shot when they're standing outside a tuck shop. And so the liberation credentials are gone. And I think that's a good thing. Not that people can forget the liberation era, but using that as an excuse to get elected when you don't provide any services to the public is really tired. So, Rob, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We hadn't chatted in a while. I'll reach out to you. And I know you're a busy guy. You've been traveling all over. And so thank you for taking the time to share it with us today. Any final thoughts you'd like to give to the audience about anything in general? Any tips, should we invest in pork bellies? No. No, I wouldn't invest in that. Commodities are a fool's errand.
Yeah, no, I don't have any tips. I really don't. I'm just knuckling down and doing the basics, moving things forward an inch a day. But, we need to be proud of our Judeo-Christian heritage. We need to be proud of Western civilization. We need to stand up and say, this is the right way. This is the best way. We're proud of what we've done. We're proud of our heritage, and we're going to keep fighting for it and promoting it. Don't be shy. Don't believe this nonsense about multipolar, BRICS, socialism hasn't been tried properly. That is rubbish and it's false.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Socialism has been tried, and it's absolute disaster everywhere. And we've got nearly 100 million dead people in the 20th century to prove that it doesn't work. So 100% with you. Rob Hersov, thank you once again. My best thoughts to you and the family. And I hope that, of course, it's opposite seasons here. We're heading into summer. You're heading into winter. I hope you guys stay warm. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
See you for the rugby.
Oh, shh. All right, Rob, I'll let you drop off, Chris, and I'll wrap it up. Take care, Rob. Thanks a lot. Hey,
cheers, folks, buddy. Bye-bye.
Rob Hersov, thank him for joining us here. Appreciate it today. He's fighting with Apple. He figured it out there. So thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate Rob joining me today. And for the audience being here, be sure to hit the like button if you haven't done it. And don't forget, go Stormers, Garrett. The Stormers are on at 2:45 Eastern Standard Time. That'd be 8:45 South Africa time. So I will be setting up that stream here shortly on my rugby channel. I had to relog into all my accounts on Firefox because the security software blocked my database. It took me 45 minutes to get back into most things this morning. There's probably a few accounts I haven't figured out yet. But I will go set that up. And then tomorrow we have the Bulls and then also the Lions late in the day. So busy weekend. And then Sunday I'm down to Maryland for a braai with South African refugees. And I'll be seeing folks down there in Rockville, Maryland on Sunday. All right, folks, thanks to Rob. I really appreciate him joining me today. And to all you who watch the program, God bless and have a good day. And we will catch you hopefully in a few minutes on the news. Let me just check and make sure I set this thing up properly so that we actually get diverted to the news. I don't even know if we did that. Let me see, so I can get you over there. No, I didn't do it. Son of a gun. Did I not set the news up? I thought I set the news up. My goodness. Wow, it looks like I don't have any news set up. I'll have to set something up very quickly, which means a lot of people. Grant Williams, last game, he's going to Japan. Yeah, that's going to suck. Yeah, I don't have the news set up. Son of a gun. I guess I got busy and didn't do that. So I'll set that up right now, and then we'll set you a link over there. Wow, how did I do that? See, it's been a busy morning, like I said. So that's crazy. Let me go ahead and set the news up. I thought I had done that. Man, I tell you what, must be getting old here. Anyway, so there are people who sent me a note about someone making videos about me. I do appreciate you sending me that stuff. And that has been dealt with. We'll see what happens. Someone's making a big mistake, and hopefully they learn their lesson. If they don't, well, there's not much I can do to help people that don't want to be helped. All right, so this is going to be set up for noontime, which is coming up shortly. There'll be no messages going out because it's under 30 minutes, about 20 minutes away. All right, what not a chance. What's this? What's Twinkle tells us says, what a not chance? What? You're becoming a kindergartner first day of school when you switch to Max, says Chugsy. Yeah, you might be right about that. No doubt about it. All right, so that's set up now. Now I just got to make one change over here to this to get you guys there. And thank you for your patience. Thanks, everybody tuned in. I'm not sure why we had a smaller audience than I expected here. Maybe it has something to do with YouTube's algorithm. I'm not sure. What's going on here? Why is it? Okay. Okay. Why is it not here? Well, that's just crazy. Now I know I set the thing up and I can't find it. Huh. It won't let me redirect. Is it because it's under 30 minutes? That's weird. There it is. Okay, so it should show up. Upcoming customization. Add. There it is. I had to refresh the page. Wow. Okay, well, that's taken care of. That was weird. All right, folks. That was a conversation with Rob Hersov talking about who can save South Africa, the future of it. I hope you found it interesting. I know I did. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you hopefully on the news here in about 15, 20 minutes on the other side, okay? All right. Government schools going bankrupt. I'm not surprised. I'm not at all surprised. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks to Rob Hersov. You guys take care. Cheers.